From a threadbare attic in Copenhagen to the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace, Alexandra of Denmark carved a life story as dazzling as it was heartbreaking. In this cinematic biography, we trace her meteoric rise from penniless princess to beloved Queen Consort of Edward VII, her groundbreaking fashion statements, unswerving charity, and the private sorrows that shadowed every public triumph. Discover how a teenage girl chosen almost by default became the most photographed woman of the Victorian era, weathered a crippling illness that sparked a citywide limping craze, confronted a husband's 55 infidelities with saint-like composure, and transformed grief into nationwide philanthropy. Whether you love royal drama, costume history, or tales of female resilience, this deep dive will open hidden doors inside one of Britain's most misunderstood queens and reveal why modern historians call her the original People's Princess. Press play and travel from the frosted canals of Denmark to the zeppelin-lit nights of World War I London as we uncover the real Alexandra. Her journey will leave you inspired and emotionally moved. Imagine Copenhagen in midwinter twilight, the Baltic wind riffling snow across cobblestones glazed like cathedral glass. Inside the peeling yellow palace, the air smells of tallow candles, lye soap, and hope. Alexandra Caroline Marie Charlotte, Louise Julia, Alex to her family, arrives just after midnight on the 1st of December 1844, announced by a cry so thin a nurse wonders whether the cold has stolen it straight from her throat. The infant's heart, however, is lion strong. She grips the midwife's finger with unlikely tenacity, as though clutching the first rung of a ladder only she can see. That ladder will one day carry her from this shabby grace and plaster apartment to the jeweled heart of an empire. But tonight, the royal census shows her father's salary at 300 specie$ a year, and the family furniture, if sold, would barely pay a seamstress's wages. The palace walls are mustard yellow by decree, but bone gray by candlelight. The title of prince or princess, in this Glucksburg branch, functions more like a mortgage than a privilege. Alex's childhood feels longer than Danish winter. Morning lessons unfold on threadbare carpets, French verbs, Lutheran catechism, piano scales tapped on an instrument whose ivory keys have yellowed to the color of old love letters. In the evenings, the family gathers around a sooty stove, its flame no bigger than a tulip. They roast chestnuts when they can afford them, parsnips when they cannot. Hans Christian Andersen regularly arrives muffled in a scarf that doubles as a table runner when the visiting writer forgets to reclaim it. He reads aloud from ink-spattered manuscripts, The Nightingale, The Wild Swans, The Little Match Girl. The latter makes Alex bite her lip until it bleeds. She knows all too well how quickly a match sputters out in the Danish wind. After the reading, he tucks the children into the attic dormer with whispered direction. When the roof creaks, pretend it's the ocean calling you. Alex pretends. She hears waves in the rafters and imagines distant shores where furniture does not shiver in the draft. Poverty cultivates industry. Dagmar, her younger sister, repairs gloves so expertly that courtiers later mistake them for Parisian imports. George hammers driftwood into toy boats. Alex tailors miracles from cast-offs. At 13, she agrees to work the refreshment table at a charity ball, wearing a second-hand gown whose sleeves she is let out with a strip of pea-green satin scavenged from a theater bin. She serves sparkling lemonade to dukes while balancing teacups on a scarred tray, bowing every time someone tosses a coin into the mission box. "Who's that polite girl with the quick eyes?" asks a diplomat from Vienna. "Nobody you know," replies a Danish lady, meaning it quite literally. Fate rewrites Nobody in 1852. Pivotal cousins die, Dynastic chess pieces slam into place, and Alex's father, the mild-mannered Prince Christian, is named heir presumptive to King Frederick VII. The announcement arrives sealed with crimson wax. Its words turn the yellow palace floorboards into trampoline springs. Alex watches servants measure windows for new draperies, but under her breath she recites Psalm 23, reminding herself the Lord is her shepherd. Silk curtains may still hide wolves. She continues to darn socks late at night by lamplight, perhaps practicing for the days when she must stitch something invisible, the distance between fortune and grace. Across the channel, Queen Victoria studies genealogical flowcharts by candle stump. Her eldest son, Albert Edward Bertie, has single-handedly turned bachelor prince into a tabloid subgenre. The Queen demands a bride whose virtue is unsullied, politics convenient, and lineage Protestant. One by one, candidates fall. Scandal here, Catholic there, French though pretty, German though plain. Alexandra of Denmark lingers on the page like a smudge of good luck. She is tall, she is pious, she rides well and speaks excellent English after only 6 months of drilling. Most importantly, she is discreet, an adjective Victoria prizes above rubies. Envoys cross the North Sea bearing watercolor portraits and optimistic timetables. In September 1861 at Speyer, Bertie meets 16-year-old Alex beneath chandeliers fashioned like frost. She curtsies, pulse hammering. He bows, curious. Over supper she mispronounces Worcester sauce. He corrects her gently. And a private joke is born. Throughout their courtship, Alex will call it Worcester in deliberate defiance, and he will laugh louder each time. He proposes 14 months later while autumn leaves spin like copper coins across the palace lawn. She accepts, though not without prayer. Royal marriages are alliances first, gamble second, romance a distant third. Yet when she looks into Bertie's mischievous eyes, she glimpses something tender waiting behind the bravado. And she hopes, oh, how she hopes, he will be the prince who chooses her Attic heart over any throne. England answers hope with thunderous brass bands. London thrums with steam presses clacking out souvenirs. God bless the coming queen banners, etched crystal goblets, penny-a-sheet cartoons of a demure Danish princess taming a lion labeled Bertie. On 10th March 1863, Alexandra steps onto the stone of St. George's Chapel, Windsor, beneath a vault of medieval fan tracery dusted by candlelight. Her wedding train, 10 yards of Spitalfield silk trimmed in Honiton lace, ripples behind her like moonlit surf. 8 bridesmaids wrestle its weight, while 3,000 guests hold their breath. Outside, 200,000 Londoners line the processional route, umbrellas bobbing like black mushrooms in the drizzle, bowler hats tipped in reverence. When she says, "I will," the gold ring catches a spark from the altar candles, and it appears to the crowd that the entire empire catches fire with it. Catching fire is one thing. Learning to live inside it is another. Alex enters British court life as Princess of Wales, household established at Marlborough House. The palace, more townhouse than castle, vibrates with ceaseless calls. Milliners, jewelers, political advisors, waistcoat inspectors, and on Mondays, a string quartet rehearsing near the breakfast room until the corgis start howling. Each morning, Alex walks the rose garden at 7, rain or shine, to gather her thoughts. By 8, she is reviewing invitations, charity bazaars, hospital openings, railway inaugurations. She banishes the phrase "no time" from her vocabulary and instead invents time by abbreviating lunch to a single slice of dry toast. At 9, she practices her handwriting because Victoria dislikes untidy curls in constitutional correspondence. At 10, she attends fittings. At 11, she checks on her children. At noon, She presides over a luncheon of 15 stiff-backed diplomats who argue Schleswig tariffs while pretending not to notice the toddler prince under the table tying shoelaces together. Afternoons belong to philanthropy. If it rains, she invites wounded veterans to tea, listens to stories about Sebastopol, and slips commemorative coins into calloused hands. If the sky clears, she rides in an open carriage through Smithfield or Spitalfields, neighborhoods where poverty clings to brick like ivy. Residents lift their caps as she passes, some out of loyalty, some out of curiosity to see a princess with a limp who does not hide behind tinted windows. Rumor later says she timed these drives so exactly that if you stood on Commercial Street at 3 o'clock each Thursday, you could set your watch by the rhythmic clip-clop of her horses. That famed limp becomes her accidental scepter. In 1866, rheumatic fever immolates her bones. For weeks she lies in a curtained chamber heavy with camphor. Doctors bleed, blister, and pray. One dawn she wakes drenched in sweat but alive, leg twisted, walk forever altered. She asks for her cane, the one inlaid with mother of pearl that Bertie bought in Vienna, and resumes life in half steps. Society follows. Ladies arrive at soirees affectedly dragging a heel, flaunting mismatched shoes specially cobbled for the trend. Satirists draw caricatures of Parliament in crutches. Alex's initial mortification softens to amusement. If she cannot outrun gossip, she will teach it to limp in rhythm. Yet rhythmic social calendars are regularly shattered by domestic tempests. Bertie's affairs crest and crash like high tide. There is Lady Mordaunt with eyes the color of wet slate. Lily Langtry, the Jersey lily, whose laughter makes theater balconies tremble. Daisy Greville, Countess of Warwick, who pens flirtatious letters in invisible ink that palace valets decipher for sport. Newspapers publish coded nods to a certain high personage, and drawing-room wits compile mistress lists the way clerks compile ledgers. Alex reads the Daily Telegraph each dawn to discover whether her marriage has acquired a new footnote overnight, but she refuses public reproach. Instead, she raises her children into pillars. Louise with artistic talent unbound, George, the future sailor king who smells of tar and salt, Victoria, gentle, patient, quietly clever, Maud, whip-smart and mischievous, and most cherished Prince Eddie, whose shy smile could, Alex swears, coax lilies from marble. She reads them Anderson at bedtime, making silly voices for mermaids and emperors in underwear, never revealing which characters tremble from her own memories. Inside the great echoing cathedrals of court ritual, Alex brings color where only protocol once lived. She introduces after-dinner tableaux vivants, static theatrical scenes lit by gaslight, where dukes and duchesses pose as mythic heroes while footmen stage thunder on timpani. She decorates the ballroom ceiling with Chinese lanterns and hires a sorcerer to float silver balls of phosphorus over the dance floor. Aristocrats who for generations sniffed at novelty now queue like schoolchildren. Even Queen Victoria grudgingly confesses in her diary that the Danish one has a knack for pretty amusements, though far too prone to gaiety. Not all gaiety dazzles. January 1871 begins with brittle sunlight and ends in black crepe. Prince Alexander John, her sixth child, arrives prematurely, his tiny ribs fluttering like moth wings. He survives 24 hours. The christening gown lies unworn. When the hearse door closes, Alex stands on the palace steps so motionless, a footman later says he mistook her for a statue of Pietà. At midnight, she enters the nursery alone, removes the white muslin crib canopy, and stitches it into handkerchiefs for each of her surviving children, telling no one what the fabric once witnessed. Months later, she travels to Ireland, where nationalist sentiment simmers. At Kingstown, crowds hurl insults and occasionally stones. One projectile splits the carriage window. Shards cut her glove but leave the skin unbroken. The incident becomes legend. Princess bleeds not, glass obeys. The Dublin papers depict her as an Amazon in crinoline. Queen Victoria telegraphs a rare compliment: courage commended. Courage, however, cannot prevent influenza. January 1892, Sandringham House windows rime with ice. Prince Eddie, heir presumptive after his father George, develops a hacking cough. Within days, the cough thickens to pneumonia, then acute bronchitis. Alex sits at his bedside, reading psalms in Danish and English interchangeably, as if switching languages might confuse death long enough for a miracle. On 14th of January, he whispers, "Mama," eyes already glassing. She will later claim she felt a literal snap, like thread tearing in her chest. After the funeral, she transforms his bedroom into a museum, skating boots by the hearth, school books open to his last underlined passage, scent bottles still half full of sandalwood cologne. Not until her own death will anyone dust those shelves. The 20th century strides in on electric feet, and after Queen Victoria's death in 1901, Alex becomes Queen Consort. Coronation rehearsals test even her Danish stoicism. One bishop faints in the heat, the gold state coach loses a wheel, and a choir boy sets his surplice ablaze on a candelabrum. Alex quells panic with a single anecdote about a childhood roof leak that forced her to sleep under an umbrella. Compared to that, she says, a missing wheel is a trifle. The service on the 9th of August brims with medieval pageantry and motor age flashbulbs. From the balcony of Buckingham Palace, she waves to multitudes that stretch past the farthest lamppost she can see. And for one vertiginous moment, she comprehends how small roofs look from a throne. Yet in private, she remains frugal to the edge of absurdity. She darns silk stockings until they resemble netting, insists half-burnt candles be remolded into new tapers, and orders palace cooks to transform last night's roast into morning pie fillings. Waste is hereditary sin, she tells the Lord Chamberlain, who wonders whether sin might mean mere inconvenience. But she dispenses generosity like a sovereign printing mint. In 1898, she institutes Alexandra Rose Day. Volunteers sell artificial roses on London streets, raising thousands for London hospitals. During one early Rose Day, she insists on standing near Hyde Park Corner herself, disguised in a plain gray cloak. She sells out her entire basket in 43 minutes, then buys another from a startled debutante and sells those too. That cloak becomes emblematic during the Great War. Gas zeppelin raids carve London's night sky with searchlights. Alex, mostly deaf by 1915, feels vibrations before she hears bombs. She refuses to decamp to safer castles. Instead, each morning she visits makeshift hospitals where rows of maimed soldiers breathe through mustard-scarred lungs. She pins a single silk rose to every uniform, bending low because many boys cannot lift their heads. Some call her Mother, some Your Majesty, some nothing at all because half their jaw is gone. She writes letters for them, 100 a week, careful never to mention stumps where legs were. The roses on her corsage wilt, replaced daily. The memory of Eddie's bedroom hovers like incense, but she walks those halls anyway. 1910 removes her anchor. Bertie, Edward VII, collapses after a series of strokes. His breath grows shallow, his complexion sallow. In the sick room, heavy with cigar ghosts, Alice Keppel rushes forward, begging permission to stay. Alex nods once. Compassion or exhaustion, no one knows, and Keppel grips the king's hand until a final pulse eludes both women. When Keppel wails, Alex remains impassive until the mistress hiccups into hysterics. Then Alex's spine straightens. She instructs guards to escort Mrs. Keppel out, lest grief become garish. Once alone, she kisses Bertie's forehead and whispers words inaudible to physicians, possibly Danish lullabies, possibly forgiveness. Widowhood takes her to Sandringham, where memories hang heavier than drapes. She rises every dawn, dresses in 6 layers of black, walks the perimeter accompanied only by a Pomeranian named Punch. She dictates letters through an ear trumpet, asks her chaplain to mark in red every Bible verse containing the word joy, not because she avoids them, she says, but because she must hunt them more fiercely now. She authorizes plans for a private railway siding to bring wounded soldiers directly from the front to Norfolk convalescent homes. When ministers object to cost, she threatens to sell her Fabergé Easter eggs to finance it. The government, alarmed at such sacrilege, approves the siding within the week. 24 telegrams arrived during 1918 alone, reporting Russian atrocities. One bears the seal of the Danish legation, confirmation that the Romanovs, her sister Dagmar's family, are dead, shot in a Yekaterinburg cellar. Alex retreats to the music room and plays Chopin's Funeral March on a piano no one has heard since Eddie died. Servants stand in corridors, unsure whether to applaud or pray. By 1925, her world contracts to a chiaroscuro of memory. Macular degeneration clouds her vision. Mastoid infections erode what little hearing remains. Yet rituals persist. Every Tuesday she writes to her sister Thyra in Copenhagen. 5 pages of news, 3 of jokes, 1 of prayer. Every Thursday she invites village children to Sandringham's nursery for lemonade and toffee, though she cannot hear their laughter. Housemaids notice she has begun to talk aloud while knitting socks for Welsh miners, addressing, it seems, the portraits along the gallery wall. "Hush now, Bertie," she scolds one afternoon when a frame tilts in a draught. "No need to wink, I'm nearly done." On the 12th of November, she feels a stitch in her side while feeding swans at the lake. Doctors prescribe rest, but rest is alien currency. She begs to see the sea once more, and on the 17th of November, the staff drives her to Hunstanton. Wrapped in a sable cloak, she stands on the pier, inhaling brine until tears form, uncertain whether from wind or gratitude. "This is Denmark enough," she says, "and England too." She returns to Sandringham flushed, legendary spirit, intact. The attack comes 3 days later, an electric jolt across her ribs during evening tea. She steadies her cup, sets it down without spilling, and rises. "Window," she tells the footman. He stares, confused. "Open the window. I would like Danish air." Outside, the night obliges with salt and pine. Alexandra sinks into an armchair heavy with tapestry of St. George. Her eyes close, flutter open, close again. A lady-in-waiting recites the Nunc Dimittis. Alex's lips shape the Latin, though no sound emerges. At 8:30 p.m., her pulse ceases. The doctor notes the time and later remarks that the expression on her face was half smile, half advice. Official mourning lasts 3 months. Unofficial mourning considerably longer. On 27th November, an oak coffin draped in the Union flag and the Danish Dannebrog lies in state at Sandringham's church. Villagers file past, some pressing rose sprigs into the velvet folds. An echo of Alexandra Rose Day come full circle. The cortege then travels by train to London, hushed compartments, reflection of funeral torches flickering on carriage windows. At Westminster Hall, crowds stand in silence so profound that when the clock strikes noon, the echo seems to hesitate out of respect. The funeral on November 28th reverses her wedding route. St. George's Chapel once more, its stones older, its congregation grayer. King George V leads chief mourners. Queen Mary punctures her handkerchief with pins to keep from sobbing audibly. Naval cadets line the aisle, George's wish for She loved sailors' courage, and behind them marched veterans, missing limbs the Queen had once comforted. A hush descends as the organist plays "Abide with Me." When pallbearers lower the coffin beside Edward VII, dust motes swirl like tiny planets in a ray of cold November sun. Above the vault, brass letters read, "Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace." And that's the remarkable and often complex story of Alexandra, whose life continues to resonate through history. What are your thoughts about Alex's journey and legacy? Do you feel history has been fair, or has Alex been misunderstood by generations? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, remember to give us a like and subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories from history. Thank you so much for watching.